And our apologies for the technical setting, but the good piece of news is that we're now done, and I promise I'll do my best as your moderator for the first part of the morning to catch up with the delay. Very happy to welcome you all in the room and hundreds of you who are online. My name is Aziza Akmouche. I'm heading the Cities, Urban Policy and Sustainable Development Division within the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities, and we're really thrilled and very thankful to the Committee of the Regions for hosting us today for this first in-person, actually hybrid and in-person meeting of the Roundtable of the OECD on Cities and Regions for the SDGs. I'll just give a few housekeeping arrangements, and then I'll hand over to our hosts today. Delighted to be seated next to the President of the Helsinki region in Finland and the Vice President of the European Committee of the Regions that is co-hosting this sixth Roundtable today, Mr. Markula. Thank you so much for your time and for the great welcome of this sixth edition of the Roundtable. Just to say that the meeting will be recorded, so everybody's aware that the recording will be made available online, that we'll have 4 different sessions today, a little break in between so that everybody can have lunch and refresh, that we have, as I said, hundreds of colleagues online. We had over 800 registrations for the entire day, so we'll see how numbers go from one session to another. And you will have a slide on the screen, I think, that gives you the basic communication background, the hashtags you can use, the Twitter handle you can use, and any other material that you should feel free to access to online and to download. We'll start the session today with the launch of 3 big reports that we've been working on decentralized development cooperation and the localization of the SDGs. We'll have a few more words on that later, but with no further ado, really delighted to hand over the floor to you, praying for logistics to continue to work and for your mic to actually continue to work. Vice President, thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you, Aziza, and great to welcome you all, dear participants, for this special event. So we had a month ago kind of one, I could say, a preparatory step for this. We especially focused on some of the SDG results from Germany, but now it's broadening the scope. And since the Roundtable started already years ago, this is the 6th of these Roundtables, and we, the Committee of the Regions, we have worked side by side with the OECD to promote the SDGs, to move further steps in the implementation of those and keep them in the very center of the policy. The European Committee of the Regions, most of you already know that we are part of the official European Union decision-making process. We represent all the cities and regions in Europe, so this is like an assembly. Plenaries, we come 5 or 6 times a year for 2-3 days here, mainly here in these premises or in some premises of the European Parliament, which we use as well along with the Parliament. So, and all our members are elected, locally elected councillors on the municipality level or the regional level. So we have a direct link to the European citizens. We come from all member states, more than 300 members altogether, and on that, so we really have a concrete link to what's going on the ground. And this topic, SDGs, so it's so crucial, and now with the results of the studies today, we can see and showcase as well what is the progress. My role as the Vice President and the former President is today a bit like hosting this, but as well take the messages from the ground to here and back as well. I will later on in one of the panels talk a bit about the process itself. What does it mean to do kind of sense-making process with the SDGs at the local level, regional level and national level, how we have linked this with the United Nations. Just the last few years have seen a reverse in the progress towards reaching the SDGs. My city, actually, we committed with the UN family already about 5 years ago to be one of the, let's say, role models supporting the others, and we put our target, the target of our city, Espoo, the second largest city in Finland, to reach the SDG targets already by 2025. It looks that we will not succeed in all of those 17s yet, but we have made a good progress, so it helps us in our policy making, but helps the others as well. And I'll talk, as said, a bit more about that in one of the panels. We need policies at the higher level to be aligned on this development and to be fully empowered. This year, the SDGs arriving midpoint. It's kind of a gamble in a way. Will the high-level political forums and the UN SDG summits put the SDGs back on the track so that we, after the COVID, we really can see that the progress is, let's say, fast enough? I'm a strong believer in the SDGs and very optimistic person, so I believe on innovations, especially societal innovations, that we can integrate, we can make changes in the laws, we can take the modern results of the latest knowledge, the results of research and development in technology and others in the use, and spread not just the word, but the results and practices for the use of all the other cities and regions around the world as well. I see more and more local and regional authorities working now on SDGs, and not alone anymore, but hand in hand with their neighboring cities and regions, and globally as well. The European Union will publish its first ever EU-level voluntary review, and as well we have around 9 or so countries who will present their voluntary national reports. We've been working ourselves in Finland hard on that as well. We have had the several cities having their voluntary local reviews already a couple of years ago, upgrading now those to the present situation, and on this upgrading process to look a bit more forward. So what next? In the meantime, we have to show the way, and the OECD is doing so tremendous work on this, supporting us on the local, regional level to do so as well. Today is another step forward for better localization. I would like to pay tribute to us, our cities around, now in this case especially in the EU, but also to the OECD work and the work of United Nations globally. We need to do our best as well to take the global responsibility on this. So with these words, thank you again for coming here, and let's have a fruitful work over the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Markkula, President of the Helsinki region in Finland and Vice President of the European Committee of the Regions, and also for being within the core such a passionate advocate, champion of the SDGs from the onset. It's been at least 5 years of us working together with the Committee of the Regions team, and I have to say it's been a fascinating journey. Let me now turn to our director, Lamia Kamal-Shawi, Director of the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities, where this work on localizing the SDGs is located. And Lamia has the difficult task from Paris, and many thanks, Lamia, for your availability to launch 3 reports that we've been producing with some of the partners around the table. You have the floor, Lamia.
Thank you very much.
So,
the sound is okay?
Yes, we hear you perfect. Go ahead.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Vice President Markkula, Director General Stay Hilbert, and Director Jaren Stump, Dear colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, really a great pleasure to welcome you all to the 6th OECD Roundtable on Cities in the Region for the SDGs. We know all that in 2015 countries adopted the 2030 agenda with a shared hope that the SDG will guide us to a more sustainable future. And as you have just mentioned, Vice President, the multiple crises of recent years have really derailed progress. And in fact, between 2019 and 2021, the world made no progress on the SDGs. And with only 7 years left until 2030, it is vital that we get back on track. So we know that national governments have made important commitment to the 2030 agenda, but we have all to remember that subnational governments have a key role to play in at least 2/3 of the 169 SDG targets. They hold important levers over education, transport, health, and housing, just to name a few. And in OECD countries, we always put these figures and remind everybody about these figures. In OECD countries, subnational governments on average account for 40% of total public spending, 55% of total public investment, and they are also responsible for 63% of climate-related public expenditure. So here in the room, you are all aware about the important role of subnational government, but outside the room, it's very difficult, and we have to remember all the other constituency about the important role of subnational government with these figures and with the fact that we are all trying to show today and remind everybody. And we know that rapid urbanization, population growth, and budgetary pressures related to increased energy prices and interest rates, and also in some countries, fiscal consolidation that has started to be implemented. All these factors are really putting pressure on already limited resources that many cities and regions have around the world. And in middle income and less advanced economies, particularly some national governments, they lack the budget and skills to make these changes that we are all needed happen. They struggle to access external finance much more than in other parts of the world. And therefore, decentralized development cooperation, the so-called DDC and city-to-city partnerships can really help some national governments address those challenges and make the most of those levers that I've just mentioned by sharing lessons, expertise, and innovations, as well as funding. Well, while there is a lot of variation across countries, there is a good news. The good news is that the DDC in general is on the rise. Between 2015 and 2021, the total volume of DDC activities measures through the official development assistance increased by 38% from around $2 billion to more than 2.8 billion US dollars. And that number is already, this increase is already big, but this number does not at all reflect the reality because it significantly understates the actual level of DDC as it only reflects assistance from the 11 countries that report data. So it's not all countries engaged in this exercise of the Development Assistance Committee. It's only 11 countries, so it's really, it does not represent all the constituency, and also it does not capture most of DDC assistance, which is provided in kind, and it's also very substantial. So in other words, the scale of assistance is much, much bigger than what the numbers tell us. So, and this DDC project really matter. We know that they are making practical change. They are delivering practical support on a number of important priorities. And over time, we have seen that the priorities have really evolved, maybe going beyond what I would say traditional focus on infrastructure projects. And for instance, in 2021, the most funded DDC area was government and civil society, which covers projects, for instance, to enhance subnational government capacity in areas such as public procurement, financing, and innovative use of data. And also in response to COVID-19, we have seen that funding for health-related DDC projects increased significantly from less than 12% in 2017 to 16.5% in 2021. And some other priorities such as agriculture and food security, water supply and sanitation, and emergency response, now they rank highly among DDC projects. So there are also a change, bigger numbers, and also a change in priority, which is very good news. So given the critical role of DDC in driving forward the SDGs, so the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, regions and cities that we represent here has joined forces with another directorate in the OECD Development Cooperation Directorate, which serve the Development Assistance Committee, which is led by Pilar Garrido, and you're going to hear from her in a moment. Together, we joined forces to deliver a global policy toolkit on DDC and the first ever national DDC review for Germany. We have also partnered with DG INTPA of the European Commission to design the first ever monitoring and evaluation framework to track city-to-city partnerships, effectiveness and impact. So a lot of work. Let me just select three key messages that came from all this work. First, to maximize the impact of the DDC actions, cities and regions should really focus their partnership on those areas where they have developed unique skills and knowledge, because this is where they can make a difference. For example, the Basque Country in Spain. The Basque Country in Spain has a strong track record on women's representation, following the adoption of the Basque Country Act for Equality between Women and Men, which served as the impetus for the promotion of equality in the region. And building on this, the Basque Country has now made gender equality, the SDG number 5, a key selection criterion in its DDC project. It allocates now 20% of the funds to action that prioritize female empowerment, and 10% to initiatives that involve a local feminist organization. So a very clear strategy and vision for the Basque Country. Another example is the municipality of Capanori in the region of Tuscany in Italy, which has pioneered circular economy practices by shifting its waste management toward reuse and recycling. And building on this homegrown experience, Capanori is now working with the Zero Waste Europe network to promote SDG number 12 on sustainable consumption and production. And they are doing that in many cities in Tunisia. So this is the first message. The second message I like to flag from this body of work is that the right legal frameworks and incentives set up at the national level can really unblock and enhance subnational partnerships. We have collected a lot of examples. And in France, for instance, the so-called Oudin-Santini law has removed legal barriers for some national governments and water agencies, allowing them to dedicate up to 1% of their revenues to DDC activities that promoting access to clean drinking water and sanitation in many cities around the world. Another example, Germany, where the federal government, through its municipal climate partnerships program, support German municipalities to access federal funding and network. And this scheme has already enabled 50 German municipalities to deliver a wide range of impactful DDC projects in many cities, from waste management in Nicaragua to solar energy installation in Tanzania and many other examples. And last but not least, and this is my last message, because aid is, of course, public money, it is really important that governments at all levels, they strengthen monitoring and evaluation of DDC to increase transparency, accountability, and also to learn lessons about what works, but also what does not work. And there are very many good examples that we can find in this work One is in the region of Flanders in Belgium, which submits its DDC program to external auditors. It undertakes midterm reviews and makes its reports available in a single database to guide follow-up actions. So there are many examples, but we have found that there is a weakness in the sense that there are too few examples, and often evaluations assess inputs rather than impact. There is some progress to be made here. So the joint work we developed with the European Commission, DG INTPA, and that we are launching today intends precisely to address this gap by providing a systemic monitoring and evaluation framework that we hope will better guide policymakers. I invite you to disseminate all this material to all members of your different networks. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I hope that this three report we're launching today and the recommendation, the tools and the examples that you can find there will provide a source of inspiration for many local, regional, but also national governments around the world to get all the DDC right and eventually help us all to regain the momentum we have lost on the SDGs. I would like, allow me to thank, of course, a number of partners and colleagues. First, Germany for engaging in the first ever DDC country review and for supporting the global policy toolkit. Thanks to particularly to GMZ and BMZ. I would like also to thank the European Commission, DG INTPA, for supporting the production of the first ever global monitoring and evaluation framework. And also I would like to acknowledge and thank the OECD team on my side, Aziza Kmouch and Stefano Martin, and all the colleagues, as well as Rachel Maurice in DDC, many other colleagues. I wanted actually to show you all the reports online, but I was told that Aziza and Stefano, they took all the OECD reports and they brought that to you. So you will be very lucky and get a copy. And I invite you to disseminate all this work. Thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing this very insightful roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamia. Thank you. Lamia Kamal-Shawi, Director of the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities. And you're right, actually, we took all the reports that we printed. Let me just show them here for colleagues online. This is the city-to-city partnership to localize the SDGs, developed jointly with DG INTPA. This is the reshaping DDC in Germany, as you rightly said, the first ever country-specific review, and big thanks to your German colleagues. You can also find, and I understand the team have put the links online, the global toolkit for DDC, which provides overarching guidance. And then for those that want specifics, we also have a brochure that unpacks 16 different partnerships, and that explains a bit the black box of how these are carried out and interestingly measured and monitored. So thank you very much. And I understand we now have a 3-minute video from Pilar Garrido, who's the Director for Development and Cooperation at the OECD and has joined forces with her team for some of these reports, the toolkit and the German review in particular, if we can showcase the video of Pilar.
Guests, friends, colleagues, good morning. I am pleased to be joining you today at this important roundtable on cities and regions for the SDGs and to launch our new joint report, Reshape and Decentralized Development Cooperation in Cities and Regions. It has been a pleasure working with you in close collaboration with Germany and our colleagues in CFE over the past year on this in-depth study. At the DCD, our long-standing work on Decentralized Development Cooperation, or DDC, aims to strengthen SDGs partnerships between cities and regions globally. We often think of development cooperation as a traditional nation-to-nation relationship. However, DDC shows us that partnerships are often a two-way street crossing different levels of government and do not only flow from north to south. Peer-to-peer learning and mutual benefits are key to successful DDC. Official development assistance, or ODA, channeled through and provided by cities and regions grew by 38% since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda in 2015, or by 6% per year, and reach nearly $3 billion or 3.6% of bilateral ODA in 2021. Germany, the focus of our new report, is the largest contributor to DDC, representing more than half of these flows. Growing contributions to DDC calls for a renewed effort by central governments to help improve the effectiveness and impact of SDG partnerships driven at the local level. Let me share with you 3 ways in which DDC can be scaled up by central governments to bolster development cooperation strategies to ensure ODA effectively targets and reaches the people and communities in need. First, with the right policies, DDC can help bring aid closer to citizens. For example, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, provides policy guidelines and best practices to initiate planned municipal partnerships with counterparts in developing countries. This has resulted in clearer focus of municipal projects on poverty reduction and local democracy, working directly with citizens and the issues closest to their daily lives. Second, with better multi-level coordination, DDC can facilitate demand-driven exchange of technical services and expertise. In Germany, for example, federal states often rely on civil society to implement DDC projects. The Bund-Länder-Programm, established in 2015, has provided co-financing and coordination for over 70 DDC projects that connect German state governments directly with counterparts in developing countries in key SDG sectors, including energy, pandemic resilience, climate change, and public administration. Least, but not last, with better data, the SDG impact on DDC can be better understood and communicated. Cities and regions are strong advocates for the SDGs and development awareness among their constituencies. Central governments will need to play a key role to improve platforms and tools to showcase data on how DDC contributes to achievement of the global goals. Today, only 11 or a third of DAC donor countries report on DDC. Moreover, only 5 of these countries disaggregate data to be able to assess the individual contributions made by subnational governments. Without more and better data, we miss the evidence base to demonstrate how cities and regions are contributing to global partnerships across the SDGs. So we encourage more countries to start reporting on DCD. We look forward for sharing this new evidence from the German multi-level DDC study, encouraging policy dialogue on guidance and good practice from the DDC Global Policy Toolkit, and seeking to promote further engagement with the development policy community. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This was a video message from Pilar Garrido, the Director for Development and Cooperation within the OECD, and that's the Secretariat of the Development Assistance Committee that most of you are familiar with. Let me now turn to our third speaker in this opening plenary, whom I understand is online. And as you can see on the screen, Mr. Jochen Steinilber, Director General for Displacement, Crisis Prevention and Civil Society within the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, known as BMZ in Germany. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Sound is fine? Yeah? Okay, you can hear me? Great. Thank you. Dear Mr. Marcola, dear Ms. Kamashari, dear Ms. Garrido, dear representatives of the European cities and regions, dear guests at the European Committee of the Regions and the monitors. I would like to thank first and foremost Mr. Stefano Mato and his team for this very comprehensive report on the German system of decentralized development cooperation. And many thanks also to the international peers from Italy, Spain, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, who gave advice on how to develop this system based on their respective national, but of course also subnational experiences. In this case, an external view on DDC is on high value because the existing system developed organically over a long period of time. And the German federal state have contributed to German development cooperation for about 60 years. Municipal development cooperation is younger. It started with the local Agenda 21 movement in the 1990s. And lack of intention does not mean lack of interaction, as the report Reshaping Decentralized Development Cooperation in Germany aptly shows. Because the federal states have issued several declarations and position papers on DDC. Some interact with their municipalities in partnership programs with one partner country, for example, Rhineland-Palatinate and Rwanda, Bavaria and Tunisia, North Rhine-Westphalia and Ghana, and others foster municipal engagement in development, awareness raising, and education for sustainable development. Municipalities of all sizes engage in projects with, for example, twin cities from around the world, or use our service agency communities in One World's program on localizing SDGs, municipal climate, and sustainable partnership of fair procurement in order to strengthen their international profile and live up to their global responsibilities regarding also the SDGs. BMZ would like to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the system and give it more strategic setup. And we therefore appreciate very much the OECD's policy recommendations, as they stem from a really holistic assessment of the existing system against established OECD standards. And first and foremost, we do see the value of using the 2030 agenda to guide policy priorities and incentivize new partnerships. Like-minded cities and regions focusing on similar challenges in SDG implementation can help also accelerate their implementation. And the SDGs are also a valuable tool to set goals and targets locally, because they can be derived from an international agreement. Peer-to-peer learning between German federal states and local regional governments in partner countries would therefore be a tool we would like to explore further. And we know from experience that this works well in North-North cooperation. And we are convinced that regional and local authorities around the globe face similar challenges, making South-North learning an important way to addressing global challenges, such as climate change, whereas many of our partners from the global South are already facing challenges that we are starting to see in Germany as well. And promoting a policy dialogue on the tangible outcomes and benefits of DDC projects can help raise awareness as well as political support among citizens and policymakers in Germany and abroad, ultimately leading to more successful development cooperation initiatives. And BMZ also values the international network on DDC that can evolve out of the peer evaluation mechanism the OECD used for its report and the accompanying toolkit. It spans fellow EU governments and regions and municipalities, but also includes municipal associations. And this means that we can start developing an international understanding of DDC that can involve further EU partners and be extended beyond this political realm, for example, to the G7 and the G20 development tracks. And this way, we can start an international dialogue that brings DDC debates closer to our national debates on localizing SDGs, but also to other international developments, such as the localization aid debate taking place in the DAC. By way of conclusion, I would therefore like to call on all participants to enter into this strategic dialogue with us to see how we can make the local and regional voices be heard in international policy making, and most of all, to incentivize local and regional development cooperation nationally and maybe even through trilateral partnerships. Thank you very much, and I wish us all a very fruitful debate. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jochen Sternberg, Director General for Displacement, Crisis Prevention and Civil Society within BMZ in Germany. Thank you very much for opening the books, for being the first ever country to undergo a similar review, and I'm sure this will be inspiring to many more DAC donor countries in the future. And last but certainly not least, with us today, thank you very much, we have the pleasure to have the newly appointed Director of DG INTPA at the European Commission, Erika Gerritsen, great partner for this work. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Aziza, and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are listening us from. First of all, I would like to thank the Committee of the Region, Vice President Markula, for hosting this event today, and of course thank the OECD and especially Aziza and her team for the work and the valued collaboration that's and expertise during the elaboration of the reports that we are presenting today, and especially the one on which we have had the pleasure to cooperate. Decentralized cooperation is part of the EU's DNA. It is core to our EU's own history. Cooperation between European countries and Europeans in general has started from the local authorities level after the Second World War. So it's really starting from this cooperation at the grassroots levels that we feel that the European Union's project has even started. Along all the past decades, there has been an increasing and steady acknowledgement at European level of the EU's and the EU external policy that local authorities play a very important role in development and in governance. I myself, having managed in the past various programs of exchange of experiences between municipalities, but also cross-border cooperation programs at subnational level, I have realized with my own experience the value of having local authorities exchanging experiences and working at subnational level on what really counts for the citizens of the countries. Local authorities are key, therefore, to achieving the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, and because they represent what we can call the last mile towards the citizens. And I think also the OECD has this estimate that nearly 65% of the SDG targets are actually or need the require the engagement of subnational governments, and that's exactly also one of these figures among the figures that also Lemina has been mentioning that makes this agenda today absolutely essential if we want to resume on the path towards the SDGs and the role of local authorities in this. So recognizing the added value of sharing know-how at regional and local level and the big potential of decentralized cooperation actions, the EC has launched in 2018 a program which is called Partnerships for Sustainable Cities for a total value of 165 million. There have been 3 calls for proposals already launched between 2019 and 2021, and there is currently a total of 57 partnerships from local authorities of EU member states and partner countries, which are currently ongoing. They represent a total of 130 partners in 34 countries in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, as well as the EU neighborhood countries. So it's with such an extraordinary portfolio of partnerships implemented worldwide, we identified the need to develop a more homogeneous approach to an evaluation framework, and this work we are very happy to have had the opportunity to partner with the OECD on. And the value added of our collaboration with the OECD on the city-to-city partnerships was to elaborate this smart evaluation framework to identify not only what happens on the ground, but also how it happens. So this led to this joint collaboration that will allow to measure the contribution of each of these city-to-city partnerships to the achievement of SDGs at the subnational level and analyze the partnership effectiveness. So we are glad to present today the report, which has already been introduced and officially launched by the OECD. This is the final product of a 2 years work between of your teams and in partnership with us, and it is therefore this evaluation framework to localize the SDGs. I will just spend a few minutes explaining more specifically what this tool is providing for. It provides for elements of analysis that allow first to identify the clear conditions for the effective and sustainable city-to-city partnerships in terms of policies, strategies, governance, data, financing, and stakeholder engagement. Second, it allows for a better assessment of the contribution of the city-to-city partnership on various of the pillars of the SDGs. It thirdly fills the gap in terms of data and information that prevent an understanding of how city-to-city partnership can contribute to sustainable development. Fourth, it identifies standard indicators to better monitor progress towards the SDGs. And last but not least, it unpacks the complexity of SDG 17 at the subnational level to be able to monitor progress for cities and regions. So it's really a very sound, technical, and concrete tools that this report is providing, and I therefore really encourage everyone today to read this thoroughly, but also indeed, as Lamina was saying, to disseminate widely in your own networks. To conclude, this strategic collaboration with the OECD confirms our conviction of the relevance of the city-to-city cooperation and the importance of promoting integrated territorial approaches for sustainable development by fostering knowledge. The dissemination of this work to member states' development agencies through our EU delegations around the world and decentralized cooperation practitioners, as you are, will offer an important opportunity to better support national and subnational governments to accelerate achieving SDGs and the expression of our commitment towards the Agenda 2030. A last point that I would like to make is that, as you know, the European Union is also developing and implementing currently the EU Global Gateway strategy. In this, I believe that it is important for the local authorities and the cities to be fully part of the discussion, because this Global Gateway strategy will eventually have impact for local governments, cities. It will involve infrastructure, but also more generally enabling environment for investments, and it was really interesting to hear about the figures of how much public investments actually takes place at country or subnational level, and therefore I really encourage you to engage from this angle on the Global Gateway strategy and see the added value of cities and regions in this agenda. Thank you very much for inviting me and for hosting me in this event. Mr. Markula, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Erika Gerritsen, Director at DG INPA at the European Commission, and a big thanks to your team members. We've worked with a number of units over the past 5 years, actually, with the previous report, and it's been really a very nice journey. We also subscribe to your point that this is the beginning of it and that we now need to spread the word and also make sure this evaluation framework is used going forward to carry out the assessment that is expected to be underlying. Thank you so much. And I understand we have a 1-minute video that recaps from a user-friendly standpoint what's in the report and what the evaluation framework is about. So if the team would like to project the video, and then we'll move to the second part of the panel.
Cooperation means partnerships between cities and regions of a developed and a developing country. These partnerships drive global agendas such as sustainable development and address crises and shocks. Between 2015 and 2021, the total volume of decentralized development cooperation increased by 38% to $2.8 billion globally. City-to-city partnerships go beyond financial flows and can include in-kind contributions such as peer-to-peer learning and capacity building activities. But how can we measure the impact of city-to-city partnerships on sustainable development outcomes? We need a monitoring and evaluation framework to measure outputs rather than inputs. Our new OECD report, City-to-City Partnerships to Localise the Sustainable Development Goals, provides a self-assessment guide for cities and a set of 59 indicators to track the progress of cities on the SDGs. This new framework will help improve the transparency and accountability of city-to-city partnerships. It will also monitor cities' progress towards the SDGs and identify the framework conditions to advance sustainable development. It will also facilitate mutual learning. Governments at all levels can use the framework to strengthen the sustainability of their city-to-city partnerships.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. The video will also be made available online and a link shared with you all participating in this roundtable after today's session. And this closes the opening remarks. We've tried to catch up a bit with the delay, but we'll do better in the next round. My pleasure now to first thank very much all the high-level participants in the opening. And I know they have conflicting agendas and may have to leave at some point, so feel free to do so whenever you feel convenient. And second, to welcome the members of the panel that we have built in a way that we're now going to hear from different stakeholders that have really taken part in the black box of the work, if I can say so, and contributed to the policy dialogues that led to these 3 different reports today, and hear from them a few testimonies on what's in it for them, how they see the value of this work, how they're intending to use it going forward, whether that echoes or not some of the messages that have come from their respective cities and countries. And it's really the objective to collect additional insights. I'll also invite the 100+ participants online to ask any question you may wish to ask to any member of the panels via the Q&A question on Zoom. And we're keeping an eye here on the Zoom, and we'll make sure we respond either in writing, the team is helping, or providing an opportunity for the panelists to say a few words in response, and I'll make sure we have 10 minutes at the end to do that. So let me now turn to our first panelist, Markus Delfs, who is the Regional Director, Germany North in GIZ. GIZ who's been really a critical partner in this work. And we've asked Markus to reflect a bit from the perspective of a national development agency to see what are the main drivers to include DDC in their bilateral and global programs, and how to promote awareness and knowledge on DDC across the different German federal states. Thank you very much, Markus, and your team for the great support throughout the journey, and you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aziza, for also inviting me here to the panel. Great also everybody to see you here on the one hand online and as well in the room here. Yeah, from a national member state agency, of course, we're driven very much also from the side of the expectations of, on the one hand, of our commissioners, which are typically public ministries, and by that means also by the public expectation on how we shape development cooperation and implementation. And this is basically connected with 2 sides. On the one hand, of course, the implementation of development cooperation projects. On the other hand, the analysis of the development or possible emergence of the cooperation environment. On the implementation side, we heard already also from Jochen Steinheimer that there are a number of projects already ongoing in the cooperation with decentral governments. In many of the projects, what we implement from the central portfolio, we work already technically with many implementation partners from regions, from cities, which are typically NGOs, academia, private sector, and so on and so forth. We do that because we strongly understand that there is a huge amount of expertise and connection to very typical fields which are highly relevant. We heard it already today from a number of partners which are connecting to what is needed in the developing countries. That is actively ongoing, but the question is indeed how we assess basically the cooperation field and the possible emergence I mentioned in terms of also providing advice and our perspectives to our ministries. And there it is a question if we for the future still consider that as sectoral topics. The decentral cooperation should be also finding the place as it does now in certain projects like sectoral activities in other fields, or if we need to explore more potentials also for more systemic integration of connecting central activities with decentral activities. And there I would indeed also jump to a changing cooperation environment for which holds true for all Europe, but also for Germany, of course, where basically values, European values, democratic values, become probably, as we all discuss today, more and more at stake in an international competition of the existence of a democratic system. And in such a time where this is much more questioned and in competition, basically the importance of a democratic anchorage of what we do becomes more and more important. So when we discuss that, how the question comes up, how we basically make sure that our particular external actions in Europe and as part of that, the development cooperation activities can be well anchored with the civil society within Europe, within Germany. And there, decentral governments play an important role because typically decentral governments, be it cities, be it regions, are much closer on the front line of the dialogues with the civil society, with NGOs, with the private sector, particularly in a federal country like Germany. This connection is utmost important because also a lot of expertise is connected with small and medium-sized businesses, which are typically at the regional or city level. So that is basically a motivator where we see this is worth to explore how we make best optimum use of tapping onto these resources. But it also comes with challenges. So basically the alignment of different government levels is something which is not easy. I mean, we see it in all countries, the alignment within the national governments, but also the European integration is kind of a challenge. It needs resources, it needs attention. Sometimes it slows also down certain processes. And if we add on the alignment with decentral governments, then it needs additional kind of attention. And it might cost also certain efficiencies, but for the value of better democratic anchorage. And this is something where we try as implementing agency to find a path also how to facilitate these processes to reduce these costs against the benefits which might come up with that towards best implementation. So maybe a few words on that.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and I liked very much your point about the scale that can help address some of that geography of discontent that we see indeed rising in a context of mistrust, but where still the levels of trust and data we've produced at the OECD shows that in local politicians remain higher than national governments. And I think this proximity angle that you developed and how you work with this ecosystem of different partners within these city-to-city partnerships conveys, some of this what you call democratic anchorage that I find really spot on beyond the sectoral specific interventions. Thank you for that. Let me now turn to Melanie Habelitz-Wolgam, who's the head of unit for international relations, development cooperation, Africa and Middle East within the Bavarian State Chancellery in Germany. I see you there. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. Indeed, I work for the Bavarian government, and it is quite funny that when I look through this window, I see the Bavarian representation here in Brussels. So this little manor or this little house is our representation to all the European institutions, and we are quite active not only in this European context, but we are also active in an international context, and especially in the field of development policy. So our approach to development policy began in 2015, 2016, when in the wake of the refugee crisis, there were many people trying to come to Europe, and really bad things happened in the Mediterranean, and so the Bavarian government decided that perhaps it would be a good idea to do some projects, do some funding, also in African countries, in order to give the people there a perspective and relieve them from this desire to absolutely need to come to Europe with all the dangerous situations that are involved with this. We quite quickly decided that as being only a German region, the approach that we have should be an approach of focus, not only of focus geographically, but also of focus concerning the policy areas that we want to work in. And so we decided that we pick some areas we feel quite strong about and do some projects in these areas. So for example, we are quite active in the whole area of vocational training. We do a lot about democracy building, about agriculture, as also Bavaria is a region that came from a very, very strong agricultural background. We are quite active in the whole environment field, climate change field, and with our partner regions in Africa, we have financial projects that we fund there, but also we do some non-financial contributions. So for example, having working groups, exchanging expertises and working together on this level. So this for us is the way to go. We do have 12 million euro each year for our financial contribution in development countries, but together with the non-financial contribution, I think this adds on, and so we are a quite strong player in the field of development cooperation in the German background, and we are quite happy about this. And perhaps allow me to to share my vision about how the whole aspect of development cooperation should develop. So when we started with the whole policy, it was like in the 50s or 60s, and the term that we used for this was development aid. Now we call it development cooperation, which is already better than development aid. But my vision would be that in some, 10 or 15 years, we just call it cooperation, like with other regions of the world as well. So this is my goal, and I hope that this is our goal, so that when our grandchildren or children are grown up, that cooperating with Africa is the same as cooperating with Asia. It's just cooperation. And well, as my daughter is already 10 years old, we do not have too much time left. So perhaps we just go on quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Melanie from the Bavarian State Chancellery. You were one of the supporting partners and actually also opened the books, submitting the survey results and how you're carrying out this work. And I think a lot of the examples you gave echo some of the overarching messages that were introduced earlier. I think this idea of focusing where you have core competencies and this selective approach, be it sectorally or geographically, very spot on, but also the fact that it's not just about money, it's going beyond financial aid. And I think the very evolution of your terminology speaks to that dimension, despite the fact that you still have a significant envelope. 12 million euros is something to carry out these activities. Thank you very much for these insightful examples. And let me now turn to our third panelist, Verena Schwarte, from the Department of International Affairs and Global Sustainability of the City of Bonn. You have the floor, Verena.
Thank you, Aziza. Thank you for giving the opportunity to talk a little bit about the experiences of a local government. Bonn has been active in decentralized development cooperation for a very long time already. Already in the late 1990s, Bonn developed a new approach for international cooperation that went beyond the existing city twinnings with European cities. And the idea of this concept of municipal project partnerships was actually to uplift city-to-city partnerships from citizens, encounters, and cultural activities to cooperation around practical topics which are relevant to the typical fields of municipal action. And in these project partnerships, the cities jointly address challenges in the field of municipal services, something that we as cities all have to deal with. And in coherence with Bonn's key theme, there is a strong focus on sustainability issues in this respect. For instance, so topics addressed are, for instance, climate mitigation, adaptation, waste management, renewable energies, biodiversity, disaster prevention, sustainable tourism, and of course, Agenda 2030 as a whole as well. Bonn also very early started to expand city-to-city partnerships to other continents. At the time, the objective was to have relations to cities in every continent. So nowadays, we are maintaining 7 partnerships, that is with Bukhara in Uzbekistan, Cape Coast in Ghana, Chengdu in China, La Paz in Bolivia, Minsk in Belarus, Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, and there's the most recent solidarity partnership with the Ukrainian city of Kherson. And besides that, we have a city friendship with Tel Aviv, Jaffa in Israel, and a cooperation with Ramallah. I think what is very important to see in the German context, where DDC is a voluntary task for the local governments, is that all our partnerships are based on a city council decision, which gives us a mandate and the explicit backing of the city council, and is a foundation for our work in these partnerships. In each of these partnerships, we also very closely collaborate with partnership associations and other partners from civil society and academia. And these networks are very important because seeing that mayors and contact persons in municipalities can change, these supporting stakeholders can and actually do play a vital role to maintain partnerships in changing contexts. We see that also currently very strongly in the context of the partnership with Kherson. The activities in these decentralized development cooperation that we've been doing so far range from the format from expert exchange, we talked about the non-measurable benefits of DDC already, to the joint implementation of large, also donor-funded projects always with a focus on sustainable development. Examples are, for instance, a project on sustainable Bukhara addressing the hospitality sector in both cities, eco-resilient city project on renewable energy, recycling, and climate change adaptation with La Paz, or the renaturation of a lagoon in Cape Coast in Ghana. Over the time, the topics are adapting to the changing environments and also including new partners. So, for instance, with the pandemic, we've been also working more closely with sectors from the health sector. A crucial point to be considered in the German context for the local governments is funding. I mentioned already that this is a voluntary task for the cities, and what we've seen in the last 2 decades, thanks to partners sitting here on the table like Engagement Global with the service agency communities in One World, the conditions, the context for funding for local governments in Germany has substantially improved, something that the cities in Germany have been working for very strongly. Another point, and I think we mentioned that in some regards already, is the perspective on multi-level cooperation, where DDC plays a strong impact. The regions have a strong role here to play, and this example of the partnership of the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia and Ghana was already mentioned. This state partnership is giving us like an umbrella for our partnership with the Ghanaian city of Cape Coast, and it builds a strong network and establishes further links and multiple relations between these two regions, which are very beneficial. But also the exchange between bringing several partner cities has been proven beneficial to get more active and to raise the voice of the cities. Last year, for instance, we brought together most of our partner cities in an SDG conference, since the Agenda 2030 is really a common framework for all of our partner cities. And from that, for instance, we developed a dialogue on sustainable tourism and also climate between different groups of the partner cities. So some sort of triangular cooperation was initiated. So more and more we can see the success of cities joining hands, and that is also developing from the partnerships that we have with our partner cities, and that we become active together with our partner cities in multi-level governance, and thus receiving more recognition for the urban perspective. I think one of the most recent examples, which might be have risen some attention, is the Mayor's Declaration of the Urban 7 Group announced at the U7 Mayor Summit in Tokyo earlier this year in March. So what are the benefits, the long-standing benefits that we have in Bonn from this? So I think, and this has been mentioned here in various contexts already as well, that our city partnerships provide us with concrete learning opportunities about different contexts, especially for our SDG work, where we bring partners from various cities together and develop joint activities. And this also plays a strong role in, if you look into education on sustainable development, which is a strong point in our municipal portfolio. I think the long-term perspective of city-to-city partnerships is also a very important point to see, and the solid foundation through, for instance, as I mentioned, city council decisions and multiple relations of various stakeholders in twin cities is a very important point, which also helps us. City-to-city partnerships have, of course, their ups and downs, but can be maintained even if at specific times there is no particular project funding or if there is a political situation that is challenging. And what we see more and more is, and that is what is very relevant to us as well, is that we join hands with our partner cities in international networking and advocacy work. We engage in international consultation processes together to raise the profile of the cities, for instance, in the Agenda 2030 implementation process. In this respect, we engage in networks like ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability, where our mayor, Katja Dörner, is very active in the executive committee as well, and where we, as City of Bonn, are regularly co-hosting conferences like Daring Cities. And lastly, but not leastly, I would also like to mention that DDC at city level is not only about financial outcomes, which is very easily to measurable, I think we had this point, but also has a strong inspirational power. I liked what you said. From GIZ side, it's bringing people of different living contexts together, and I think this exchange component should not be neglected since it helps us very much to understand the global situation a lot better, and it helps to motivate people to act. And we can see that, for instance, very strongly in the big solidarity shown in the partnerships with Ukraine cities at the moment. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Verena from the City of Bonn, and thank you for sharing the way Bonn perceives DDC and uses DDC in practice. I think very interesting insights that also echo some of the findings of the different reports, the focus on sustainability areas, that is a strategic decision, the voluntary approach, the fact you do have political backing with these city council decisions, I think is very important. The increased emphasis on health I found very interesting, because this is actually a trend we see across donor countries that report on DDC. We see health now come first and foremost as the primary area in the creditor reporting system, and I think that speaks a lot to the COVID and how we've realized that cities are actually driving the socio-economic and environmental determinants of health, even if sometimes they don't really control the health box, so to say, whether we're talking about doctors or infrastructure. So thank you for this, and also many references to global outreach agendas, I think, that are really spot on. Let me now turn to our Spanish representative, Maria Pilar Moreno Fernandez, who's head of decentralized development cooperation and education within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation of Spain. You have the floor.
Thank you, Aziza. Thank you, the OECD, for the invitation, and good morning to everyone, and thank you for being here. As you know, Spain is a highly decentralized country, and I think most of you are acquainted with our decentralized model of cooperation for development. And I wanted to bring here two examples, one of coordination and another of city-to-city partnerships. As you may know, we have reached high levels of coordination in terms of the planification of the cooperation for development. Our documents, all of our documents are very much participated and are approved by all the autonomous communities and also the local governments. Now we are trying to improve our coordination in monitoring and evaluation. And in 1918, we started a pilot project trying to monitor our activities. And we have agreed 33 indicators aligned with the SDGs, trying to improve transparency, accountability, and communication. These indicators cannot be used to measure progress towards the SDG implantation in our partner countries, but can be used to have a tool to show our activities from the autonomous communities, the local authorities, and the central government, to have a coherent tool to show our progress. In this pilot project have participated the Basque Country, the Catalonian country, and two other autonomous communities, as well as 4 big local authorities. So we are very much happy, and I think they are happy also, because they can use these indicators when they plan an activity and then to monitor their progress. So that is one example. We are very proud of this example. And I want to bring an example of city-to-city partnerships from Fuenlabrada. Fuenlabrada is a city close to Madrid that has 200,000 inhabitants population. And what they do is that they organize every year a seminar in their city, and they invite and finance the trip of about 40 civil servants from cities in Latin America, and they show them their services, the municipal services. And then if all these people from Latin America, if they want, they can follow up. I mean, they can copy the model, and Fuenlabrada will help them to develop this model in their own city. And I think it's an outstanding example of also of technical cooperation that sometimes is very difficult to bring local authorities to develop this technical cooperation. Well, thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Maria Pilar Moreno from the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation, for sharing these two examples and also putting the emphasis on the transparency benefits of the monitoring and evaluation process that you are undergoing in Spain. I think we'd be very eager to explore and discuss follow-up and potential relevance of the monitoring and evaluation framework developed as part of this work for your country in particular. So thank you for this. And let me now turn to Fabrizio Rozzi, the Secretary General of the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, CEMR. Fabrizio, welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Aziza, and thank you to the Vice President of the Committee of the Regions, Markula. Thank you, OECD colleagues, for the production of these three very interesting and insightful reports. This is really what we need, right? This is what we need, bring awareness and knowledge around the work and the space of decentralized cooperation in development cooperation, which of course goes beyond the usual development channels. So we need indeed more of these reports in the future. Many of the previous speakers have indeed put a bit of emphasis on the need really to speed up our efforts when it comes really to the work we are doing on sustainable development goals. This is pretty much, of course, due to the time that we lost due to the COVID pandemic, 2020-2021. I completely buy this message, and this is actually the message that we delivered in New York last year during the HLPF. Our message was very clear. We only have 7 summers left, and we need really to increase our efforts if we still want to make this the decade of action. We will be indeed in New York also this year to present the reports we are producing on the voluntary subnational reviews and on the voluntary local reviews. This year, probably our message as a CMR platform will be a bit different. I think that we really need now a good exercise of self-confidence between all of us. I have always the feeling that we are very, very fast to speak badly about local and regional governments when things go wrong, and very slow, you know, to spend high words on those institutions when things go well and when they are really doing a great work. Decentralized cooperation is really, for me, one of these very bright practice, and this is indeed something that we need to emphasize in New York. Some of the previous speakers emphasized already the fact that sustainable development goals cannot be achieved without local and regional governments. They are responsible, at least directly responsible, for delivering on 65 of those targets that we are familiar with. I would also like to say that they are very, very committed, local and regional governments. This is what we are seeing at CMR Platforma. Despite the crisis, despite the very challenging times, there is really a revamp on the ambition of local and regional governments to work on decentralized cooperation. Just yesterday, I was reading about some French mayors that they are really called French cities to keep working with Burkina Faso, for instance, in Africa, despite the very challenging circumstances and the tensions at the national level. And this is what decentralized cooperation is about, right? It's really building bridges despite the challenges. It's also bouncing back from very difficult events. So commitment is there 100%, yet local and regional governments, of course, they need support. They need monitoring and evaluation frameworks, of course. They need a roadmap. They need tools. They need investments. They also need a hub for exchanging best practices, investing really in the excellence of decentralized cooperation, producing knowledge, policy analysis, and this is pretty much what we are doing under CMR Platforma. We really have the ambition to convert this platform into really the highlight program for decentralized cooperation. Currently, we have 29 partners. Most of the local and regional governments that we have been mentioning this morning, the Basque Country, for instance, the Flemish, some of the Flemish cities, they of course work with us under Platforma, and we are of course looking forward at increasing the work that we are doing with these partners. DG INTPA is investing in Platforma already since 2008, and we are really thankful for this. Indeed, we need to invest on building the institutional and operational capacity of those regional and local governments that are really active on decentralized cooperation. So we really hope we'll have the chance to keep working with DG INTPA for many years in the future. Probably, yes, a last word from my side is just about this reminder. If you are considering going to New York this year, do not hesitate to reach out to us. This will be a very important event for CMR Platforma, and we will be presenting our 2 reports, so do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Fabrizio Rozzi, Secretary General of CMR, and also to the entire team within CMR and Platforma for the long-standing cooperation on these issues. I have to say, from the very first report back in 2018, there's been extensive policy dialogue based on your wisdom, knowledge of this topic, but also the way you facilitate experience and knowledge sharing across your members. We now have a last but certainly not least speaker that I'll introduce in a moment. I'd like to invite those of you who are in the room and want to take the floor. We'll take 2-3 questions. We'll squeeze a little bit the break if Stefano agrees. I speak under his control. It's fine. You'll get a coffee, but maybe slightly shorter than half an hour. Maybe what I'll invite you to do, that way I can track requests to take the floor, is just to do like this, if this works. This is how we do it at the OECD, but just so it's a bit, and I can take 2-3, so just let me know now if one of you wants to speak. And I understand most of the questions that were raised online were actually addressed online, so that makes us buy a bit of time. So if you wish to ask a question to any of the panelists or make a statement or share your own experience, we'll have a window for 2-3 interventions. The earlier you flag yourself, the more comfortable I am assigning the floor. Now, let me turn to Neila Akrimi, who is the Director of Strategies and Development within VNG International and also the Chair of UCLG's Capacity and Institution Building Working Group. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Isa. You know, speaking last has some privileges, you know, because it helped me structure my thoughts. So thanks a lot for all the speakers before me, and it's very nice to be back in this house of European cities and regions, and also talking about an important matter that for us as an agency of national cooperation, of Association of Dutch Municipalities, but also as a working group of United States local governments, of practitioners on decentralized cooperation, is really a feast. Because having all this attention, how important it is to involve local governments in international cooperation, and how to structure that in a policy and dialogue. It's very, very important. It's what we have been lobbying for in so many years. I recognize so much in the presentation that's given by dear Lamia in the beginning about as much as we recognize the importance of local governments and of business cooperation, it is still remaining difficult to get through that in different contexts. When we say about decentralized cooperation, there's an enabling environment to it, which is decentralized systems, and it's not given everywhere in the world. The CIB group, which is, by the way, existing even before UCLG, just to show you how important it is and have been for local governments around the world to discuss cooperation and development, based on principle of solidarity, reciprocity, but also mutual learning and empowerment. And from that perspective, the CIB-UCLG working group, we have been developing policy papers, and the recent one, I'm showing it to you now, And it's on a call for action to integrate dialogues about importance of local governments around the world in decentralized cooperation and cooperation, how important it is. And we have been presenting this policy around 5 points, which are really so much matching the OECD different reports. And I'm really happy to see this result and product on which we have been working together with OECD team. And I still recall the discussion we had in Daejeon last year for the UCLG World Congress, where more than 4,000 local government representatives were there. And we discussed the monitoring, the evaluation. We discussed also the importance of the role and how we matched all the different ideas. So very, very grateful to the work done by OECD, because it's a voice we need to have to enhance the different points, as I said, in our vision of South cooperation from local governments. The first one is the recognition, as I said, recognizing local government as an important actor. And this recognition is important, not just saying it, but really make local government as a formal partner having a seat at the table, be it on international or regional, or even with our national governments. And that's really, really important. The second one is recognizing decentralized cooperation as an approach for development. Marcus just mentioned about recognize it as a sector or recognize it as a systematic. I would say any form of it is already a step forward, because it's not given. It's not given that even national policies are recognized from different also discussion at the CIB working group, represent the Association of Municipalities Active International Cooperation, how it's for us sometimes difficult to sit with our ministries of foreign affairs to insist on getting us on board on policies and papers and how we enhance also the agenda of international cooperation, the 2030 and beyond. The third point is, also mentioned by my dear colleague from Platforma, is how we empower local governments to hold that role, how to make them effective, innovative, professional, but also sustainable in their work in the South cooperation. And this is something that the CIB group is really working hard on. And we have an annual meeting taking place in Marrakesh in the 15th of May, the week. And you are really all invited to join in. And for the first time, and I think it's important also to recognize that this cooperation is not something that you do from your own perspective, it's something you connect dots with others. This is why also I'm really happy that DLOG, some people here know DLOG, it's really the platform of donors investing and supporting decentralization and DDC around the world. We will have a joint working session and hopefully also joint perspective of collaboration to connect dots between visions, the visions of local government, the vision also of national government, but also the donor community. That brings me to the fourth point, is how to further engage decentralized cooperation in the financing systems. I know the EU, I think you have been really an example in that, but it's important to have that on a wider perspective, international cooperation agenda around the world. And the fifth point, and I think it's really important, is also what we try to do through this policy, but also through all the discussion we have as a world organization, as a CIB platform, to enhance this recognition at the policy and advocacy level of the importance of this task cooperation. And we do that because it's really, really important to sustain these methods, first at the national level and then at the national level, but also at the multilateralism level. And the pressing challenges we see around the world now, as we sit now in this room, we know what's happening in Ukraine, we know what's happening in Sudan at the moment, we know what's happening in so many countries in Africa, Asia, even in the heart of Europe. So I think it's really, really important to create that common understanding on the importance, but most importantly on the how question. How do we make all those principles and values workable? And I would really hope that with the different reports and also the monitoring tool, that we will have also other sessions to discuss together how it has been implemented and how we came out to really conclude on that further. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Neila Krimi from VNG International and also chair of UCLG's Capacity and Institution building working group for these insights, those 5 big principles. And for the booklet, both UCLG and CMR do send us the link, so we make sure we include the references to your forthcoming or recently published material in the summary record of this roundtable. Thank you very much. I understand that Bertelsmann Foundation has asked for the floor, so I'll give you the floor, sir, and invite you to introduce yourself. And if anyone else wants to ask a question or make a statement, maybe raise your hand if the paper doesn't work. And I have one there, and I think we'll close here. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Henrik Riedel from the Bertelsmann Foundation in Germany. I have one question, and that is, in 2020, our foundation published a report in cooperation with Engagement Global on SDG indicators for municipal development cooperation. And within that report, we found out that it's very difficult to define indicators for that policy field, and that it's even more difficult to collect these data, especially if the data should also serve intermunicipal comparisons. Therefore, I would like to ask if the OECD report also contains recommendations maybe for national or regional governments to establish regular statistics that also serve intermunicipal comparisons for SDG indicators, like, for instance, the overseas development assistance quota, which is maybe only one indicator. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Maybe we'll take the second question, and then I'll ask Stefano to give it a start, and I'm happy to fill in the gap. And I think we have Rachel Morris online as well, if Rachel can be upgraded to panelist, if that's technically doable. And I invite Rachel to say something from a ODA flow perspective. Sir, please go ahead introducing yourself.
Yes, good morning. Carl Wright, Commonwealth Local Government Forum from the UK. I have a question relating to climate action, SDG 13, and of course climate extends to SDG 11 and many other development goals. My own organisation, the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, has just published a paper on EU policy and support for climate finance for sustainable urban development. And I was very interested to see that the G7 just last week in Japan issued a couple of communique statements about the importance of subnational action on climate, including, and they mentioned this specifically, city-to-city cooperation, which I think is important. And they've agreed to set up a roundtable on subnational climate actions, which we understand will also feed into the G20. So the question really I have for Fabrizio O'Neill and other members of the panel is, can city-to-city partnerships be more focused specifically on climate actions, especially given the funding opportunities from the European Union and German government and others for climate finance? Can those partnerships be more focused in that direction, given those funding opportunities? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else? This is the last call. Okay, so maybe while the panelists think of who wants to step in here, I'll ask Stefano to go first. Rachel, you're not in the room, but we missed you, so I had to put you on the spotlight, and then you'll add to this. And maybe, Rachel, I think you can also touch upon the climate part from the markers that you have in the creditor reporting system. I think that's useful insights. Stefano, please go ahead.
Thank you, Aziza. Thank you, Eric, for the question. Indeed, as you said, it's very complicated to collect indicators for this development cooperation at municipal level. And with the work with the European Commission in particular, we are proposing this framework and recognizing that in particular in developing countries it's very challenging to collect this kind of indicator. We develop an indicator framework based on two different lists of indicators. One is more comprehensive with 57 indicators that perhaps is more appropriate for cities and regions in OECD countries, and one that is about 25 indicators with the basic one that we consider that perhaps are more easy to collect also in developing countries that can serve the needs of cities in developing countries.
this specific project with the Commission is the aim was indeed to help advance, in particular, the measurement of all SDGs, but in particular SDG 11 and the SDG 17. And in the working with Germany, it is very complementary. In the Global Policy Toolkit in particular, we provide also some recommendations to national statistical institutes on how to better support cities and regions or federal state, in the case of Germany, to monitor and to report on ODA. And maybe here is where Rachel also can complement the answer.
Rachel? Okay, so we don't hear you. We'll probably try to fix the sound. Wait a second, Rachel. I think you're on mute. Now it's good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's okay. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Paris. Yes, so happy to provide some further details on the creditor reporting system and how we track ODA. In the Global Policy Toolkit, as well as in our study in Germany, we had a close look at how, particularly in Germany, we had a very close look at how at the level of Länder and municipalities, the different actors are reporting to the different agencies and institutions within the country. And we see that this is a very complex process sometimes, that there are, in fact, across ministries, many areas that are being, many parts of the house that are working on development cooperation. And so we see that there's a need to better understand internally within OECD countries what is the landscape of ODA that could be reported, of official development assistance that could be reported. And so with the creditor reporting system, we have a database in the OECD. So this is tracking official development assistance that allows to not only look at climate. I mean, we have, of course, the Rio markers that allow to track climate adaptation and mitigation. We also have gender markers. And then more recently, we've introduced the SDG markers as well, so that that cities and regions could even mark which SDGs their projects are targeting. And just to say, I mean, of course, that we hear time and again, ODA, that aid is an important part of the picture, and that it's not only about financing, but about the non-financial contributions. So here again, the data that we can gather around how these projects and partnerships are targeting the goals is even more important to be able to assess. So the German study and the toolkit provide examples and some more in-depth granular recommendations on how you can look, for example, at how Spain is doing some innovative reporting methods, or how France is working towards, has prepared a one-stop data hub for their work. So lots of interesting areas of innovation across OECD. And so, yeah, happy to discuss further offline as well if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Fabrizio, do you want to add something here? You have the floor briefly, and then I look around if anyone else wants to add, then we'll close.
Aziza, I will try to address the question that was raised by Carl, because this is a very interesting question, and to me this is quite spot on, because at CMR platform we are indeed now developing this reflection, also under request somehow of the European Commission, on what city-to-city cooperation will look like in the future. And we have identified already at least some, I would say, three strong components. First of all, city-to-city cooperation will have to be mission-driven, 100%, going beyond really this ad hoc synergies and having really a mission-led approach in the long term. The second component we identified is community. It should be really community-focused. In the past, we have seen many years ago, at least at the very beginning of the city-to-city cooperation, it was mainly a phenomenon that was not going beyond the walls of a city councils. Now, of course, in the future, the city-to-city cooperation should be really able to mobilize the communities around the local leaders. And the third component is, of course, should be really, and it will be, long-term cooperation. And on this, of course, the challenge is around financial sustainability. So when building the basis for city-to-city cooperation, this is indeed a reflection that we will need to have. What is the financial sustainability of this work in the long term? So thank you very much, Carl, for this question.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. And maybe a few additional insights or just hints towards available sources to mention that we have at the OECD a subnational climate finance hub that is trying to push the frontier in this tracking that you were mentioning earlier. And we're actually working these days on a report for the G20 on financing the city of tomorrow that pays attention, but not only to the climate component. But I think the point that you made goes beyond the SDGs tracking or the city-to-city partnership tracking. I think at the OECD we insist very much that national average masks huge disparities, that we need to go very granular to actually help policymakers design place-based policies. But the more granular you want to be, the more data scarcity you face, paradoxically. So we do have a database on regional database that tracks a range of socioeconomic and environmental indicators in 2,000 regions, for example, of OECD countries. But when you go to the city level, and we're talking about the big cities, the functional urban areas that are above 250,000 inhabitants, what we managed to grasp so far is 600 of them. And then when you go to the comparison angle, you even add a complexity, because sometimes you compare things that are not comparable because countries define cities in a completely different way. This is why international comparison, at least in the way we've done it at the OECD, has strived to have a common functional urban area that makes things comparable beyond national boundaries. So I think there's a lot of insights there, but definitely unpacking the climate challenge and what can be done at the very local level, and sometimes going sectoral can also help provide these deep dives. But common data challenges within OECD advanced economies. So imagine when you go to the global south and you strive for such levels of comparison. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the session, and I would like to thank you all for your patience. We're 20 minutes late, but we'll catch up, no worries. Big thanks to Anya here, head of division within the BMZ, but also to Marcus, regional director from GIZ, and I think Sebastian, Engagement Global, is in the room as well. Three major support partners for the reports that we have launched today, and Andrea now is sitting here also from DG INPA. So big thanks to the partners for the journey and the follow-up that we are discussing, and also thank you all partners around this table for a fantastic first part of the morning. Let us now have a break. I think, Stefano, I speak under your control, but 20 minutes is decent for you, okay? You have the task to catch up then, because you take over for the next session. But we've split somehow the delay. So let's grab a coffee. Those online, get your coffee, and see you all back in 20 minutes sharp.
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.